Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another episode of From the Command Post. We are here at our command lab broadcasting today's episode. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about the water rescue events that took place on New Hampshire Avenue near Sligo Creek Parkway in the 1st Battalion area. But before we get started, I just have a couple of things to talk to you guys about. As many of you know, the Command Comps season has started. This weekend, we're going to have our Command Comps presentation on the 15th at 8 a.m. as a reminder. So if you're around, it's going to be on Teams. We're going to talk about the process and what the scenario is going to be for this year's Command Comps. All right, the first day of Command Comps is going to be the following Tuesday on the 18th. If you didn't see the email, there's a Google Sheet floating around. You guys can sign up for your slots so we can ensure we have enough people so we can start the testing process. Right? As always, make sure you're signing in so you can get your COPDI hours. And if you haven't already and you can help us out, hit that subscribe button on your computer there so we can better track this and we can continue to grow our program. So without further delay, I'll pass it on to Division Chief Gary Cooper.
Hi, Division Chief Gary Cooper. We have a lot to unpack today, so I'm going to introduce our cast and then pass it on. So to my left, Battalion Chief Russell Blankhorn, Battalion 2 on the B shift, Battalion Chief Mark Davis, Battalion 1 on the A shift, and Master Firefighter Dave DeVore, Station 10 on the A shift, also a member of the Swiftwater Rescue Team. So to keep it moving, I'm going to pass on to Chief Davis now.
Thanks. So we wanted to share with you today in this episode a water rescue event that occurred back in July on New Hampshire Avenue at Sligo Creek Parkway. We've kind of had a couple water rescue events that were unique over the summertime. This one was unique. It was during a period of really torrential downpours. Heavy rain came through the area. There had been a number of swiftwater calls already in the battalion, and those of you that may have worked or passed through that area, you know that Sligo Creek is very notorious for flooding, and it's fast. It rises fast and it goes down fast. So on the screen you're going to see some maps of the area. This is some Google shots. So the incident occurred at New Hampshire Avenue where Sligo Creek Parkway comes in, and that's where Sligo Creek also exists. Of note here, I'm going to say 50 years ago, something like that. I believe we had that anniversary not too long ago. 50-some years ago, two firefighters from the Chillimadelphi Fire Department were killed at that intersection, at that bridge, in a swiftwater event, attempting to make rescues from people trapped in their cars. And of course, a very similar event occurred this night, absent any injuries to fire rescue personnel. So this is kind of what it looks like when there's not flooding occurring. I'd like you to put up the incident map. So for those oriented to the north is going to be University Boulevard. So the red circle indicates where the incident occurred. So you have the blue line that comes across, and then you see the ICP. That's where the incident command post was. Probably about maybe 150, maybe 200 feet up New Hampshire Avenue away from the water. Water flow on your screen was going left to right. And of importance, you'll hear some discussion about where does Sligo Creek next cross a roadway. And that happens down in Prince George's County, down on East-West Highway near Chilham Manor Road. And that's going to be that blue circle. So that's kind of the landmarks. We had just run a swiftwater call at Wayne Avenue and Sligo Creek Parkway, and units were kind of cleared from that. So I wanted to set the stage with that. So swiftwater folks had not been pre-deployed anywhere. We had a bunch of storms come through. Swiftwater calls started coming in. I'll say around 11:30 at night, 11 o'clock at night, something like that. We had the one at Wayne Avenue and Sligo Creek Parkway, Schuyler Road. It's a common place for that to occur. When I was a captain at one a bunch of years ago, we had a water rescue there. The Tower 19 ended up going in and grabbing people off of the hood of the car. On this night, we resolved that one pretty easily. Actually, Park Police did. They pushed the car out before we were able to get any of our folks to go help them. So they solved the problem. We cleared the problem. They put out a box alarm in Six's area. I'm heading to the box at Six's area. Got smoke in the metro elevator or something over there in that area. Somewhere as I'm going down Wayne Avenue to Georgia Avenue, they put out the call for the Swiftwater event, and they're sending Battalion 4 there. So we made a quick change on the radio, say, hey, look, send 4 to Bethesda, because he probably has a clean shot down there. Send me to New Hampshire and Sligo Creek, because I was not that far away. And so that's what happened. Everybody was out of order. People were different places that night. 2 was on another run. I forget exactly what the running order was that went to New Hampshire, but we ended up with 16's truck being first, and 34 cleared, and Squad 801. You'll hear some of the radio traffic. So what I'm going to have the folks play for you is a little bit of dash cam video, mainly because you can hear the other radios in the car. Pretty torrential rain. We're going to listen to the first 4-minute clip. Hold on, just hold that for a second there, fellas. So in the first 4-minute clip, the call's already been dispatched. Units are already en route. What you're going to hear is some updated ECC information. We always talk about, hey, pay attention to what they're telling you. Do you have a water rescue or not? It's going to be pretty clear. They're going to tell you that stuff. Then we're going to hear later on in this 4-minute clip some questions about trying to figure out on the map where a crossing is located. Then we'll have some time where 16's truck gets on the scene and Captain Barcinas provides a situation update of what's going on. And then we're going to hear 834 talk about going to another crossing, and then we'll stop that clip. So we're good to run this clip. The audio is in competition with the wipers in the rain, but it is what it is. So.
Responding to Hampshire Ave, Sligo Creek Parkway. You have a gray Nissan Altima with the driver on the roof.
So real quick, right, think about a clue going, right? So this is intel that you're gathering. Somebody's obviously made a call, got one in the water, somebody on the roof of this car. We know it's a bad spot for flooding.
Reportedly floating down the road. Units okay?
Cars floating down the road. You may recall a number of years ago, there was a drowning, Swiftwater call, 29 north of Colesville, and that person ended up down in University Park. So the rescue squad out of Prince George is clearing the wreck. They're asking to run the call. I said yes.
Your message.
The wreck was right down the street, so they were pretty close.
Does Montgomery want me on the water rescue New Hampshire and Sligo Creek? What unit are you? Rescue squad 01. They told me to switch over.
You're going to hear some discussion from me about asking ECC to look at a map and figure out where the next crossing of the water is. I didn't know if they could do that or not. I knew I couldn't while I was driving.
Take a look at a map if you can, see what the next crossing of that Sligo Creek is, and the stage and tell that. Get GG to send the route crossing on Sligo Creek.
I realize ECC is busy, but I thought maybe somebody might be able to.
I'm on the scene. I'll go ahead and establish command until the arrival of the chief. I have multiple vehicles in the water. I have at least 5 or 6 vehicles in the water. I can confirm one person on the roof of one vehicle. It It does look like it's floating, but it's pinned up against the curb. The water's moving pretty quick through here. Have the boat assets come southbound in the northbound lane of New Hampshire, if they can, coming from Ethan Allen. And we can launch them from there. They'll be closer to the event that way.
Swiftwater 710, 710 Bravo, and boat 725. You okay on that? 3745, cheers.
So Captain Porcinas does a good job of giving a size up on-scene report for me.
Whenever you get on the message, you got to figure it out. That next crossing, I don't know the map in front of me. It's going to be in the Prince George's County side. Get them to send the unit to Sligo Creek.
Engine 834. Next crossing is going to be on East-West Highway, right next to Chillum Manor. East-West and Chillum Manor.
All right, can you handle that?
We're on the scene, New Hampshire.
All right, 844, any chance you can handle that crossing? East-West Manor.
844 copy. East map.
All right, that's good.
Yeah, stay on our channel.
You can stop that clip there. So, Ray, I am not a talk on the radio guy to the folks on the scene en route to a call, but on this call, I felt there was a bunch of moving parts and we were really out of whack in terms of units everywhere. And I was worried about, number one, the incident location and the fact that we had cars in the water and they're floating and people on it, trying to get ahead of that. Otherwise, I'm generally shut my mouth till I get there type thing.
So I have a quick question. Excuse me. I think the wipers and the siren competed with the ability to understand what was going on. What was your intent for wanting to know the next crossing of the water?
So if we lost one of the victims into the water, where could we deploy throw bags and people to maybe grab them?
Yeah, so downstream kind of
Downstream.
thing. Yeah.
You can't really get to that in many spots. Ironically, I don't think we have it on the clips that I picked. 34 made another rescue back on 13th Street or 13th Avenue prior to going to where they were going. They came across another person on a car in floodwater, and they grabbed them off. They let me know, say, hey, we're delayed, we're grabbing somebody else. So, yeah, if you look at this map that they're showing you now, going to pop up there. Just outside the red circle where the green dot is, talks about the neighborhood park. That's where 34 grabbed another person off of a car back in there. Otherwise, trying to pick downstream where I can put people maybe safely on a bridge, throw bags, whatever, to try to stop somebody that's going down through there. That was my intent.
So I'm gonna ask a question that is pretty themed to what I've been asking throughout my involvement in this program. You already told us you were responding from a previous water call, so no surprises there, right? And you're tenured, so you know that it's not impossible to have a swift water call in that area.
Right.
So typically I've asked in the past the other battalion chiefs standing here, what was your mindset when you heard a swift water call in that type of area? It's how do you get ready for something like that? How do you get your mind focused beyond the, really? How can that possibly be? So I guess I'm thinking through the answer of this to myself, and I want to talk about the fact, I want all of us to talk about the fact that we're not just a fire department anymore. We haven't been for a very long time. We're an all hazards emergency response agency, and people rely on us to be experts in a lot of arenas.
Yeah.
And I guess we can elaborate on that as we continue to go through the program. I kind of jumped ahead.
That's okay. So my stuff, I had worked at one when we had one of these off of Schuyler Road back in the day. And I was truly impressed at that time with how fast that damn creek came up. And then, of course, how fast it went down. But it was like, wow, right? And then right on the 50-year anniversary of the Chillum line of duty deaths, I researched that some and posted that. And looking at the photos of that, not tonight, but That car, the reason they died is that car got up against the side of the bridge and they got swept over that. And they were in just a plain old aluminum V-bottom boat and they got pinned against that bridge. So they replaced that bridge, but when you listen to ECC talking about they're on the hood of the car and now it's floating away, and then Captain Barcinas talks about it's pinned up against the curb, my fear is, yeah, the car's not going to go. They're going to go over that wall, and the next spot is Chilham Manor. But yeah, I would have expected there only because I worked there when it happened. But I don't know, trying to think of somewhere else I'd go. Well, the 1 to 12, we did the boss talk, right? Back in the, I would have never guessed it. You had a kid fall in there. You got to rescue him out of the rapids at Northwest Branch Trail.
Or, my mindset is I'm thinking about the captain who's worked in the 3rd and 5th battalions their whole career.
Yeah.
They're bumped up to work Battalion 1 that night. It's like, what am I supposed to do with this? Right?
Water main ruptures on River Road, and they're
Water-
floating boats in front of Station 10, right?
Yep.
Okay, so we have another clip. So this will be the arrival. I arrive on the scene. There'll be some stuff happening. This kind of takes us from arrival on the scene to where the first Swiftwater folks show up, which then takes us to Master Firefighter DeVore. A couple of things to note here. There is a car that drives into this scene, right? Stuff is not controlled yet, trust me. We're trying the best we can, but there's a car, drives high speed. You'll see it go down the street, ends up being another car in the water with another victim, right? And you'll notice as I arrive, everybody who has blinkers on back in there, they're stuck in the water. And when this car goes in, you'll eventually see that he goes so far and then starts to float away also. So this takes it from me coming on scene. There'll be a little bit of discussion. You'll see some stuff. It rains harder, and then the Swiftwater folks show up. So if you don't mind playing the next time. Driving on scene.
Somebody mark the water's edge for me, please.
Asking folks to mark that water's edge. Captain Barcinas was already doing that. We're going to see how fast this was coming up or going down. So all those cars ahead, hard to see. All those
Chief,
blinkers.
I'm sending SWAT 801 on the other side to mark the water's edge over there. This side.
Everybody with the blinkers in trouble.
Got it. All right, all Swiftwater rescue assets. We need you to come from University Boulevard down New Hampshire Avenue. Right. We saved room for you to put in. We have several vehicles on that water. I've got prisoners and vehicles for the next crossing.
That's a change from what Captain Barcinas said. And honesty, I never knew that he said that. So he asked them to come the other way.
I had nobody near or in that water in turnout gear. Everybody nearby needs to be in a PFP. We don't enter unless there's an immediate rescue needs to be made. Unlike with those cars before that bridge. Swiftwater units coming the southbound lane behind the battalion vehicle at the station. And one more unit's coming to Hampshire Ave.
Basically establishing the command post and talking about where to set up on those Swiftwater crews. I do make a transmission on talk around that says, hey, this is where we killed some folks here 50 years ago. Fire service.
971 with command.
Truck 716's officer.
Assigned 16's officer is safety.
Good.
I'm going to sign the safety. Let Swiftwater do the thing, but I need you to be running extra set eyes on those.
I did that early because I didn't want to commit further to the incident, and I knew that he would do a good job at that.
Hey, on talk around, everybody operating right. This is where we killed a couple firemen in Swiftwater, so nobody messes around.
There's the car driving in.
At
the log flume at Six Flags. You'll see here shortly he starts to float. And there he goes.
Chief, did you see that? We got another vehicle.
Montgomery, you got to get a hold of the police. They've got to close down New Hampshire Avenue. We just had another vehicle drive last week. 884, come north on New Hampshire Avenue.
They're coming down southbound also.
Police are going to have to handle it. Trying to get a hold of them.
Swiftwater folks have shown up. Give me Master Firefighter DeVore is going to come to the window here.
I have a vehicle floating downstream on Sligo Creek. He's up against a telephone pole.
Find another car.
It's occupied 2 times.
And the Swiftwater cemetery. Man, whoever the Swiftwater officer is tonight, he got to New Hampshire.
Swiftwater 17, go ahead.
Are you here yet or not? I don't see it.
We're approaching.
Alright, first thing out of you is you're going to have to tell me if you've got enough Swiftwater assets here for what I got. I'm looking at like 4 or 5 vehicles in the car with people. Command to Battalion Chief 84.
So we're putting the PG Battalion Chief in charge of the other side down at the Chillin Manor crossing.
I'm going to redirect you to that crossing, the next crossing in your area, 844.
He had 2 engines with him.
I'm worried about people being swept away here and heading to that next crossing. So I need some folks in place there to be able to deploy flow bags or whatever.
Okay, Fairbank Edge 844, can you advise what intersection that's going to be? So I can make sure I'm at the right location.
Nice day for a swim. We'll,
So do you have enough help here?
once Swiftwater 710 gets here, I'll have it.
Fairbank Edge 844, I'm at the crossing of Chillin Manor and East-West Highway at this time. Do you have a better location for us to go to?
Check. We'll work our way out and check those cars.
That is the next crossing. That's the nearest.
All right, we can stop it there. You're good to stop the video. All right, so let's just recap that a bit. So you saw the command. Somebody get on the scene, establish command, talk about who I was going to assign to do what. One of the discussions that occurred, at least you heard out of my mouth, was, hey, do you have enough people here, meaning enough Swiftwater people, enough assets? Right, I don't run these on a regular basis, and I wanted to make sure that they had enough to be able to engage in terms of what they wanted to do. And I wanted to see somebody to my car, and lo and behold, it was Master Firefighter DeVore, who was representing the Swiftwater team coming. When I asked for the Swiftwater team leader or officer on the radio, that was Master Firefighter Hobson. He wasn't here yet. So I felt we needed to take action, people in peril, and I trusted these guys to tell me what they needed, and then I was going to support their plan and not want to distract from it. Right. So I'm going to, unless you have a question,
No,
let Dave go, right? Because I want to hear what you went through and what you did, and
Okay.
right.
So after I talked with Chief Davis, I basically walked down the road to the intersection and spoke with Captain Barcinas, who was a safety officer, and I'd asked him if they'd marked the water line, and he said they had, and what was the water line doing? Was it rising, falling, or stagnant? And he said that it was staying steady. So from there, as I looked out, I could appreciate 4 vehicles. There were sort of 3 right in front of us, and there was a 4th that was down really at Sligo Creek Parkway in the intersections by that convenience store, a dry cleaner, or whatever, that little place there. And as I looked at the vehicles, the hydrology that was around the vehicles, the 3 that were in front of us were no longer floating, so they were pretty stable. And The fourth one, over by the creek, had a lot of water pushing around it. And so that was the one that I was concerned that might move. And the resources I had at the time was, on the Swiftwater side, was really only my crewman, who is firefighter Jeff Olds. So from a Swiftwater perspective, there's only 2 Swiftwater folks who were on scene at that time. Boat 725 had showed up just before us, and in the clip you could see them.
Let me interrupt. What,
Yes,
what
sir.
were you there on? Just so everyone
So
understands.
I was on boat 710, or Swiftwater 710 Bravo.
And you were there in the time frame you got there because you were clearing the previous
Correct.
call? Okay.
We had actually gotten on scene on the other end of Sligo Creek, and I'd spoken with the park police there, and we had mitigated that scene and just cleared it, and we're trying to figure out how to get back to Station 10 when this went out. So the good news is that we were in the area.
Right, you're fast.
Yeah, we didn't have a long response time. So from a Swiftwater perspective, I had one car that had a lot of hydrology and but was stable, wasn't moving, and so what I was able to do was to use boat 725. These guys are trained at the boat flat water level, but they have had some training in shallow water crossing. And so what I elected to do was use boat 725 Captain Kraft to do shallow water crossings to the 3 vehicles that were in front of me. That allowed me to keep sort of a big picture, keep an eye on that other vehicle, and provide some sort of safety for the folks from boat 725 as they went out. They took PFDs, and they did a very good job of doing a shallow water crossing and accessing the patients from those 3 vehicles that were pretty much directly in front of us in sort of a triangular state.
So how long did it take you to, A, make that assessment, B, make that decision, and then at that point, did you recommend that to Chief Davis, who provided the direction, or did you provide the direction? Tell us.
So what I think, the time frame, as you know, on calls is sort of skewed. I don't think it took very long for me to make those decisions, but a minute or two. Conversation with Captain Barcinas was pretty quick, and everything was sort of right in front of us, and Captain Kraft was standing there. So I made this decision to send 725. I do believe I articulated that to the chiefs, that I'm going to send boat 725 out to manage these 3 vehicles. I'm going to provide some sort of overwatch for them, and then when another Swiftwater unit gets there, a Swiftwater 710 with Master Fighter Hobson was also on the same call earlier, but he was on the other end. So it was taking him a little bit longer to get around to us. So my plan was to let 25 manage those 3 vehicles with some overwatch, and then when another Swiftwater unit got there, that we'd make entry and manage that 4th vehicle that was down on Sligo Creek, just because the hydrology around it, I didn't feel real comfortable sending folks who had never been in a inland flooding situation out to that vehicle unless there were some untoward circumstances. If that happened, then I would have made entry and had them provide some sort of safety or overwatch for us. Fortunately, what happened is that they mitigated those 3 vehicles. The water was receding by the time Swiftwater 710 got there. So we still went out. I still took 4 Swiftwater folks in total went out to that vehicle that was down on the Sligo Creek side, interacted with those folks. They were fine. They didn't want to be seen. They didn't need any assessment. And the water by that time had pretty much dissipated. So they wanted to stay with their vehicle. They didn't need the resources of fire and rescue, and so we left them there. But the other folks from the other 3 vehicles who were evacuated through floodwaters were taken up to be assessed by EMS. And so that was a plan, and I think it unfolded probably, I want to say 15 minutes, maybe 20 at the most, by the time I was heading back to speak with Chief Davis in the command post to tell him that we pretty much wrapped everything up and that there was no more life safety issues.
So you were done before the other Swiftwater crew even got there?
Yeah, pretty much. By the time they got there, and they weren't far, but by the time they got there, the water had pretty much receded, and I didn't really need additional Swiftwater resources to manage that situation. But since they were there, I figured we would walk out and take a look at that vehicle to make sure that it was, in fact, stable and those guys were fine.
So in the heat of the battle, I want to ask this question. I think I already know the answer, but is there a way for the command officer to look real quick and understand that crew from 25, that boat crew, is more than likely operational flat water and not swift water? Do they wear different colors?
So the short answer is that they do wear different equipment, and if it is responding as a boat versus a swiftwater asset, then they have flat water training, or they should have flat water training. So they show up, they're probably wearing a yellow helmet and an orange dry suit, then they are not swiftwater unless there's some other things going on. If they mark up as a swiftwater unit, so if we had pre-deployed and we had crews go to 25 and upstaff that unit and it had responded as swiftwater 725, then you can rest assured that those folks are swiftwater. But if they're responding as a boat, then
and again, I'm looking through my window, right?
So so as you can see, looking through Chief Davis's windshield, not only is he parked at an appropriate distance back, but with the rain, can't really appreciate what's going on down there. So it's hard to get a big picture from the command post.
So I think we have a question from the audience.
Yeah, there's a question, and I think it's directed towards you there, Master
Okay.
Firefighter DeVore. And I think you touched on it a little bit, but it says, would you ever recruit, right, would there ever be a situation where you would recruit regular firemen as manpower with you to walk, since swiftwater resources were not there yet, with PFDs, of course?
So, as you know, speaking in the fire service, in always or never is a complicated topic, and you'll get yourself into trouble if you say you never do something or you will always do something. I think in this situation, the resources that we had is we had folks who were flat water trained, and so those are my next best folks to utilize. If you're in a situation where I need to enter the IDLH and certainly I can use operational folks as downstream safety and upstream spotters. So that's something that we do frequently, is to use operational folks to do that, to provide those roles. I don't want to say I would never take somebody who had no training into that, but I think as soon as you say something like that, that 1 in a million or 1 in a billion call shows up and you get yourself into trouble. It would certainly not be my preferred thing. Inland flooding and those situations, although it may or may not look dangerous, the reality is that there's a significant amount of hidden danger in those waters. And if you're not used to or not trained to look for them, you can get yourself into trouble real quick. So I would like to send people out there who are accustomed and have that training. I hope that answered the question.
Yep. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to throw this to Chief Blinkhorn in a minute or so, but I have another question for you.
Okay.
For command officers out there who don't have a tremendous amount of experience with water, right? I'm sorry, I thought you would call them. Who don't have a tremendous amount of experience in swift water. What kind of advice, fundamental basic advice, can you offer to a command officer who has actually found himself in Chief Davis's position without the experience that Chief Davis has?
Sure.
Not only with swift water, but with unique events in unexpected areas.
So with inland flooding in particular, the most important thing from our perspective is, what is the water doing? Is it rising, falling, or stagnant? And so I'm sure that a lot of the command officers have heard is marking the water line. And then when we get there, being able to tell us, what is it doing? Is it rising, is it falling, or is it stagnant? And that gives us an indication as to what the life safety risks are going to be. If it's rising, then that's a problem. And that's something that, as a command officer, when, the event is in Battalion 5 and we're coming from the bottom of Battalion 2 and the water's rising, what do you do? And then that comes back to, you have to make some hard decisions, and life safety and all that plays into it. But if the water is slack, then generally speaking, the bulk has come through.
So put that in English. What does slack mean?
So we've marked the water line, and so rising, is it coming up past the marker, or is it staying in place? So I've marked the water line with a cone, and the water's just over the base of the cone, and is it staying there? Is it just covering that cone? It's not falling, but it's not rising either. And so that would be slack.
Okay. It's important to clarify that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I wasn't giving you a hard time.
I forget sometimes. So if it's slack, generally speaking, the bulk of the water has come through, and we're sort of seeing the tail end of it. So the good news is that in a period of time, it should start falling. So, and if it's falling, then the hard thing to do, or even if it's slack, is to be patient. Because the water is going to start receding, and then by the time you've engaged, you'll probably find that your feet are dry. So the big thing is to mark that water line, figure out if it's rising, and if it is, then you have to make some command level decisions as to how to engage with that.
As well as try to provide the victim or the perceived victim some direction. Hey, stay there. We're coming to you, right?
So absolutely. So there are things that we want to do for these victims, and I don't know if we want to talk about that later.
Please, go ahead.
So the most important thing we can do is get some sort of flotation to them. Generally, it's a PFD, but if you have a throw ring, some of the units have throw rings on them, some sort of flotation so that if they do get separated from the vehicle, they have something to hold on to that's going to keep them out of the water. And then once they have flotation, you can kind of take a breath, because that's the most important thing. Once that's done, you can make some decisions. Do we need to engage or not engage? If you do need to engage, you need to be very careful about how you engage that vehicle, because it can move, especially if that water is rising. So whether you can get a throw bag to them or a line that they can then hold on to, and you can pull them out or help them, assist them out of that situation, is certainly the best thing you can do. So that old reach, throw, row, go still applies. So if we can reach out to them with a stick or a pike pole or some other means, throw bags, whichever unit should have on at this point, then rowing or using some sort of boat is not an option. And then the last option is to actually put yourself in an IDLH and enter and try to effect a rescue. So, but getting flotation to them is the most important thing, so that if they do get swept off that vehicle and down into the creek, they have something to hold on to that's going to keep them out of the water. And quite honestly, my nightmare scenario is that citizen ending up in the creek, or one of our rescuers getting separated. And because if you looked at that map that Chief Davis put up, getting to them, that crossing at East-West High is, so it's going to be an extremely complex rescue to get into the downside of that creek and find the person and rescue them.
So I was running through that in my brain. What am I going to do if they don't show up, right? And we have to, are 6 fire trucks full of people going to watch 5 people drown, right? And my answer to that is no. But what's our choices here, right? Thinking back to, like, the first thing was, can they just stay where they are? Right, and that is the water coming up or down. Can they just stay where they are? And then what are we going to do if they can't? How are we doing it? I didn't have a good answer.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, the tough
Right?
on-the-spot
A
decisions.
tower out over top, giving them something. Can I throw them a throw bag with a, here, pull this life preserver out? Do you speak English that I can understand how to put it on, right? You're going to see somebody put it on. I mean, it was all kinds of stuff. And that was dude that drove into the water was drunk. He didn't go to the hospital. He went to jail, right? So it was, fortunately, they showed up. And fortunately, it was on the de-escalation side of the water going away. And, yeah.
So now it's probably a good idea to also remind everyone watching that we do have an IRP as a resource, and also a new command action guideline as a resource. So speaking of resources, I want to now move over to Chief Blankhorn, who is our subject Battalion 2 water guy today.
Okay.
And is there anything you want to talk about this incident to start with, or you want to move into?
No, I ran a call similar on Clara Barton Parkway, which we got video of. If we have time, we can play that. But you ask any of my officers assigned to me in Battalion 2, they'll tell you that there's 3 things that I'm usually pretty hot and heavy on. 1 is beltway safety, 2 is battery fires, and 3 is flooding, because I don't think this flooding problem is going to go away. It seems like it's getting worse, right? The county just came out with this whole flooding website for people. We had the one on off Twin Brook, Ellicott City. It just, we're building and building, and we're not giving any place for this water to go. So I think flooding is not going away, and like Chief Cooper said, we're an all hazards department, and we need to be prepared for that. And I don't think a lot of people take that into consideration. Some do, some don't. So my biggest, this is just to throw this out there since I'm on the subject, is because we talked about finding personnel that are comfortable, like Master Firefighter DeVore said, finding personnel that are comfortable wading through or walking through that water is hard to do unless you're assigned to a boat crew or a swiftwater crew. So my recommendation, just overall would be for company officers to start thinking about this, because there's going to be times when you're on a call and swiftwater units are committed to other flooding events, and you're going to have to take action. And it's something that shouldn't be new to you. So reach out to the swiftwater team, reach out to the training academy, take some classes, so that if you're put in that position, you're not kind of sitting there with people yelling at you going, are you going to do anything? That's why we called you.
Yeah, so a couple things. So what I like to talk about, certainly when we talk about the new battalion chiefs, those of you that work in Battalion 2, and even the 3rd Battalion can be argued this, you have somewhat of a safety net compared to those in Battalion 1 and Battalion 4, because most of the time, if all goes the way it's supposed to go, the water guys are going to be there before you, right? So most of the time, that's a benefit, most of the time.
Most of the time. So, again, going back to Clara Barton Parkway, and we talked about this before, this was a couple years ago, we had that rain event come through the county, and I think we ran like 70-some swiftwater calls within an hour or two. And, the swiftwater team was all over the place. And I think I was on my 4th or 5th one when I came across the Clara Barton Parkway event, and luckily, I think Tower 19 was, again, this was right by the American Legion Bridge, to show you how much movement was going on. Tower 19 was already there. And they had a car floating down I'll call it the river. It was just basically a river coming across the Clara Barton Parkway, and the swiftwater team just happened to be clearing another call, and they saw this car floating down underneath the bridge, and were able to catch it. But that was just, again, luck of having the swiftwater team in the right place at the right time, which, again, luckily that seems to be the case a lot of times, just like it was in this event. And we're lucky to have a swiftwater team in this county that's so well trained and runs so many calls, right? A lot of departments don't have that. So it's a good resource, but they can't be everywhere at once. So,
and that's a really good point, because the day you talk about, we started, all of us, right, that were working on that, we started running calls, I believe, in 23's area was the northernmost swiftwater call. And it was swiftwater all the way down to the DC line.
Yep.
And I want to say there were 10 or 12 working all at once, and every one of them was legitimate. Every one of them had a victim that needed aid. We didn't have swiftwater in all of them. Chief Davis mentioned, I didn't know what I was going to do. Well, on one of them, I used Tower 23's bucket to pull somebody off the roof of a car. We all had to get creative.
I have 3 questions. You can finish, though.
We all had to get creative that day, and I was just reemphasizing what Chief Blinkhorn just said about, hey, it's coming, and every year it gets worse and worse. So let's start the 3 questions, and then I want to get to Chief Blinkhorn's video and talk about that incident.
Yeah. And I want to answer your original question.
Oh, well, hold on a second then. I'm losing track here. Go ahead.
Yeah, so your original question was having a safety net as a Battalion 2 chief. And from my experience so far being assigned there, the swiftwater calls that we run on the river are not the same as these urban flooding calls that we're talking about here, right? When I run the river with the swiftwater team, it's usually somebody on the trail, and we're using the boats to get to them. We consider that a swiftwater call because we're putting boats in swiftwater. Right, but that's what they do, and they're comfortable with that. And me, in my position as the incident commander on one of those calls, I'm just there as a support role, right? I'm letting them do their thing, and I'm looking through the CAD comments, looking through my phone apps, the GPS, trying to give them info. So it's just like a search and rescue mission, right? We're trying to find the patient, and then I need to figure out how to get the patient from their location to the ambulance. That's really my job. One of the first things I was told when I got down there was, stay off the radio, let us do our job, right? Because it takes a while for the boats to get up the river.
Was that Larry or Donnie?
So, occasionally we'll have a stranded kayak, so somebody hanging on a rock, so we'll have a missing person in the river. Those, but again, a lot of those are I'll call them search and rescue missions.
Yeah,
Right?
absolutely.
Whereas you have some of these cars stuck in the water here, it's completely different. So I don't feel I have some sort of safety net down there. I do as far as I have the units coming, but if they're up in 23's area or scattered around, I show up by myself. It's one of the things I always bring to my swiftwater crews is what do I do as an incident commander if I show up and you guys are on other calls and I got a family of 4 standing on the roof of their minivan? What should I do? So that's, again, why I always tell these officers and even the company members, go out and prepare yourselves so you know what to do. So we talked about a lot of it here. Marking the water lines, getting the PFDs, getting safeties in place. For us as incident commanders is figuring out who I got on the scene or who's coming that is comfortable doing a, shallow water crossing.
So that's a really awesome point that I want to continue with. So we're gonna put the questions on hold for now. I think what I'd like to do, if you're okay with this, is I'd like to play your Claire Barton Parkway video, and then I'd like you to dive a little deeper into the difference, especially the mindset difference on not only the command officer but the crews operating of the urban swiftwater highway rescue versus being on the river. You did a really good job explaining what you believe your role is on the river, and a lot of people probably never heard that before, right? Mm-hmm. So let's look at the different type of swiftwater and then talk about the mindset and what you believe your role may be, either or before the swiftwater team gets there, while they're there, and then closing down the call.
So I don't want to spend too much time on this call. The purpose of this video is pretty much to show how fast the water can rise. And Chief Davis mentioned, or it was mentioned here earlier, where Chief Davis positioned on New Hampshire Avenue was well up from the water. And here's where I'm parking originally, right? And you see someone running down the street there. That's the captain from Tower 19 because he saw a car float away. So by the time I get there, again, the swiftwater crews are already there. Actually,
it's a good picture of the water level there.
Right there.
Yeah. You see it coming at you?
The one in front.
Yeah, so I believe this is towards the beginning of the video, right? So let's just, again, you got swiftwater crews already on the scene making rescues there. Look at the 2 cars at the very far in the distance, right? You got water just getting up to about that white car at the top of the tires, we'll say, right? So let's fast forward maybe 3 or 4 minutes and then see what happens to the water. All right, so here we skip forward a few minutes. You can see the little island there that's in the center is pretty much gone. So the water's rising. To be honest with you, I was so engaged in where the swiftwater units were going because there was another swiftwater crew down around the bend underneath the bridge that goes underneath 495 that caught this car that was occupied floating down. So I was dealing with that and trying to figure out how many cars I actually had involved in this event. So again, let's skip forward another 2 or 3 minutes. And now you see water, right? You see water in front of me. And again, I don't even realize this yet, but water's already hitting I parked on dry land when I got there, and water is already coming up to my tires. I didn't realize it yet. And let's skip forward. And again, look at the car, right? Look at the cars. Water is rising. Luckily, the swiftwater crews were already there. Let's actually back up a little bit more. There you go. So here's where I realized that I'm starting to get in trouble. My car is starting to go underwater. So,
and you're alone, right? There's no.
Yeah, so I was alone, and I didn't realize it until I looked out over my hood and I saw water, and I'm like, okay. So I pull up a little bit further uphill here. But this was just a good example or a good reminder to me of how far away you need to park and how important it is to mark the water line because this water was rising quickly. So that, again, I don't want to spend too much time on that event.
No, I think
again it was a good one of those examples of, hey, I had the swiftwater team in the right place at the right time. There were a lot of events going on,
and I think the value of that video is certainly to show those that haven't experienced it firsthand how quickly that water will rise on you.
And this is not somewhere that normally floods, right? This is not somewhere that anybody expected floodwaters, but everywhere was flooding that day. I mean, I remember driving around and I just was getting boxed in by water everywhere.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
All right, I'm going to, unless anyone wants to interject at this point, I'm going to go to the questions and then see what kind of conversation that develops.
Right. So I think the first 2 I'll just tie them together, right? So we were talking about slack, right? So how important along with slack is the speed of the water coming up or going down. Is that something that we need to note and talk about?
So I would say that the speed of the water rising is important. If you can identify that. Sometimes, you send somebody out to mark the water line and it gets marked, but they're not necessarily paying. That's not their sole responsibility. There's other things going on. Certainly, if you notice that the water is rising quickly, the time frame for you to make a decision is, we're kind of behind the eight ball at that point. Because if it is rising quickly, I really would hate to send somebody into that event. It's like watching a fire develop that's starting to blow out a window or starting to push hard. Who do you send in, and all those kind of decisions that the command officers have to make. And as it's rising, it's just going to get more dangerous. It's not going to get better until it stops and then it starts to drop. So clearly, if you can identify that it is rising quickly, that's when you need to be able to make that decision.
And then the second part was you talked about using a fire truck, or Chief Davis talked about using a fire truck. Is there any concerns about buoyancy, and is it more buoyant or less buoyant than a car and fire trucks floating down the river kind of thing?
Oh, I wouldn't talk. So that's a good point. Out there on the social media world, right, you see a bunch of places, not a bunch, a number of places have high water vehicles specifically for the removal of people, right? A lot of times along the coast, you look in New Jersey has a bunch of them. I think Charleston, South Carolina actually just took possession of one. We don't have any of that, right? And we're not going to have another Tower 35 go submerge the rescue people. I was talking about, can I use a ladder truck to get something over top of somebody to either help them, remove them, or at least get something to them? So back when we talked about Sligo Creek and Schuyler a whole bunch of years ago, Tower 19 used their bucket off of Schuyler to get over top of this car to get to these people, right? So that had been a thought. Problem was I had no tower there. I had a ladder truck. I wasn't a fan of using a ladder truck if I had to move people. But if we used that to get stuff to them, i.e. closer for a rope bag or PFDs or whatever.
From a dry position.
We're not driving the fire truck into the water.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
Nobody even around here has anything like that, right? There's nobody that has a high water rescue vehicle. I mean, mutual aid wise, it doesn't exist.
So the other question is, what are, and if there are, what are the trigger points when we start upstaffing Swiftwater resources? Do we have any?
I would have to turn that over to.
I've been out of the game for a little while, but based on the way we did it back when I was in the game was there's always a conversation between the special ops chief, the operations chief, and the duty chief, and that starts, usually the day before when you hear Doug Cameron saying, "Hey, it's going to be a washout tomorrow. We're going to get 18 inches of rain or whatever it is in 30 minutes." They start talking, they start planning, and they have specific trigger points. I'm pretty sure it's a published guide. I don't want to talk too much because I don't want to say anything wrong, but I'm pretty sure there's a published guide that defines trigger points that was developed for that reason and is available for the doc to use, and the operations chief and the special ops chief, they're talking for 24 hours prior to the event.
Sure. And then with that, they also, where did resources go as well, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, and that's all dependent upon what the forecast is, right? We've all heard them put Swiftwater assets at 34, at night. I've actually heard them put them at 2 at night. I mean, we've staged them all over the place. So it all depends on what the forecast is. And the funny thing is, what we were talking about earlier as a group prior to this is whatever decision those that are empowered to make the decision make, they're never right? And then you have your firehouse experts tomorrow morning. But a lot of thought goes into it, a lot of practice, a lot of history goes into it, and they do the best they can with the information they have.
Sure.
It's a good question.
Thank you. Yep.
So if you don't mind, there's two types of events that we run. There's a notice event and a non-notice event.
There you go.
Right?
Perfect.
So a notice event is the weather folks are saying we're going to get 16 inches of rain in the next 24 hours, and then they spin up and they try to anticipate where there's going to be flooding and whether there's going to be upstaffing. We're just going to move folks around. where we see most of these is the non-notice events, right? That storm that comes through and it lasts a very short period of time, but it dumps a lot of water in a very concentrated part of the, so.
That Claire Barton Parkway day, that was a non-notice
Absolutely.
event. No one knew it was
So-
even supposed to rain that day.
So whether it's Claire Barton or New Hampshire Avenue, a lot of the inland flooding that we run are these no-notice events. And so we just take that one call at a time.
Yeah.
And so there is really no pre-positioning for those events.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
And those are the ones, the no-notice events are the ones we end up seeing the action on. It's the ones that we plan for and
Right.
prepare for.
Right.
Everyone
As I noted
stays dry.
before, I was Battalion 3 during Isabel. Hardly anything happened. 2 days after Isabel, we're demobilizing. I'm working with Fairfax County Swift Water team on the northern end of River Road for somebody trapped in a floodwater because it rained. Had nothing to do with Isabel. And we had sent everybody back.
So we have some time left. Is there a certain direction we want to take this in? Do we want to talk about some of the non-river incident pointers?
Well, I think I have so I'd like Chief Blinkhorn two things. So, hey, the person get hired overtime. We're bumped up to be Battalion 2, right? So what should they be doing to prepare themselves that day, right? In other words, hey, we're going to be Battalion 2 for 24 hours. What things am I looking at? Help me out, right, for that. We generally don't see LFRD folks move to cover that, right? But let's just say, hey, I'm a Rockville LFRD, and I got to be ready to run to the river, whether it be 30's area or 31's area or whatever, right? So.
Yeah, so what I did when I first got assigned there was I went and met with the Swiftwater team, right? So even if you're assigned there just for the day, first thing that morning, go down and meet with the Swiftwater officer and just say, hey, what do I need to do to support you today? Because, again, we are fortunate to have a Swiftwater team that's very good at what they do, and there's a lot of incident commanders that come in there and feel they need to, I want to say micromanage, but they got to feel they need to talk on the radio and they got to be doing something, when really you just need to let the Swiftwater team do their job and you got to support them. So talking with the crew that's working that day so you get some expectations, making sure you understand the river maps so you can quickly identify points of interest, whether it be islands or trail markers. Our river map that we have, the Google River Map that's available publicly, is updated on a regular basis.
Yep.
Anytime
Yep.
we find, usually it's me, I hear some sort of weird point of interest called out on the radio on another shift. I'm like, I've never heard of that. Now I have it added to the maps. That way, if I hear it again, I can look it up on the map and say, oh, that's what they're talking about. So knowing how to use that, the what three words we talked about at the last session, it gets used all the time. It's even getting used out on, regular calls now. So having that app and knowing how to use it. The only problem with that app that I've found is that it doesn't kind of layer over the Google River Map, so that when I pull up the what three words map, I usually pull up a Google map on a separate device and try to figure out where that patient is in reference to points of interest. And that's the information that I am conveying to the river team.
I want to hop in there for a minute, only because I remember something from our Bostock episode, right? A comment came in and we didn't get it up on the air, so what three words works great. I've been showing people everywhere I go. It's really cool. Thing to keep in mind is the person who calls and you're talking to them on the phone, right? If they have moved, then they got different what three words, right? Meaning like, hey, I got my car on my left, and you call them back or whatever. So be very good about, if you're trying to pinpoint to the person who's calling, that they are physically at least where the incident is, or if they're not, they're stationary, so that they get a good what three words, right? Because it's 9 square meters, right? It's 3 by 3, yes?
Yeah.
I think, right?
So there's been times when I've actually had callers call 911 so that 911 can grab their GPS location and then translate it into a what three words and post that for us. There's also a bunch of good apps out there that you can just plug in the GPS coordinates
Yeah.
and get that same information. But what 3 words definitely makes it a lot easier.
Doesn't show up as a phone number.
Right.
Right, that's the biggest problem.
Yeah.
So what device are you bringing the Google map or the what 3 words up on?
Honestly, usually my portable, my cell phone. It's available on the battalion iPads, but I have everything in a folder on my personal phone. All the river stuff that I need is in a single folder that I click on.
Have we investigated putting that folder on the desktop of your MDC?
I believe we have. I don't know where we're at with that. I think there's some information already on there. But again, I'm so used to using my cell phone that I don't use those.
Yeah, I'm just trying to let everyone else know what tools are available to them.
Yeah. So again, if you're to answer Chief Davis's question, if you're coming down there and you're running the river, it's knowing how to quickly access the river map because it has all the points of interest. What 3 words? Having that app available.
Tactical worksheet for the water?
Tactical worksheet, tracking the units, and just understand that there's going to be, depending on where the patient or the victim is at, there's going to be some long dead airspace that you have to anticipate. But you also have to recognize there are some places that still have radio problems, even though we've done a pretty good job of fixing most of those. There are still problems in some areas, down near, we call it Mary's Wall, but it's a big wall down there, and that's why I make sure that at least on my shift, everybody's bringing their Zello phones, because Zello phones work perfectly fine as long as you have them.
So something in line with that being ready to be Battalion 2, let's talk about the dispatch, right? The Fairfax and Montgomery, or sometimes now Loudoun, right?
Yeah.
What the well, I mean,
Yeah, we don't want to go down that.
we don't want to surprise anybody, though, right? So
Yeah.
tell them why
Right.
you hear Fairfax being dispatched on a call, right?
So-
the water's ours, the land's there.
So
yeah.
Chief Cooper's right. So if I'm the branch, right, we got some folks that are going to be bumped up or whatever. They go to Battalion 2 and they hear a couple assets going to Fairfax County on the Swiftwater call. It's like, am I supposed to go? Am I not supposed to go? Do I listen to the radio?
We don't need to talk about the politics of it.
No,
Just talk about
it's
the
like,
facts.
hey, this is what really happened.
Yeah, I'll try
It's
to
like
give you the reader.
going to
Digest.
6500 Riggs Road. They go, right?
Right. So there's a couple places, and I'll let Master Officer DeVore expand if he needs to. There's a couple places in on the Virginia side that we get dispatched to pretty on a regular basis. It's Scotts Run, and then some parts of their Great Falls Park, which is on the trail, which we're usually not used on. Scotts Run is the only area that I think I've run on a regular basis where our boats have actually accessed and either helped with some sort of tech rescue or actually brought a patient back over, because it was quicker just to bring them back over to an ambulance that's sitting at Anglers than for them to do a hike through the woods from that location. But one of the reasons that we have I don't want to say it's a problem, but the problem with Fairfax and that area is all the cell towers hit in Virginia. So if somebody is calling from the Billy Goat Trail in Maryland on our side, it's usually hitting a cell tower in Virginia, and it's going to Fairfax's 911 center. And they have to try to, and then of course you got civilian call takers over there trying to figure out where this person is, and it takes a couple minutes for them to realize, oh, they're in Maryland, and then that call gets transferred. But it's just the information, and we don't have the actual caller on the phone, so we can't get their GPS. So there's a lot of misinformation that sometimes occurs. I think we've done a better job working together with Fairfax, but there's also been a lot of, we're not going to get into politics, but we had that event up in Loudoun County, a year or two ago, that you're going to have resources coming, right? And battalion chiefs are going to have to coordinate with other battalion chiefs from other jurisdictions on who's going where. So, sometimes
Maryland
it makes
owns
me
the
down.
water, though, right? Maryland owns the water up to the
Maryland
Virginia shore.
Owns the water, correct.
So, not saying that by default, but if you're in I don't want to say a discussion about who does have authority, Maryland owns the water, right?
Correct. And
It's not in your
there is-
best
there is-
move to say, I'm in charge of this,
Right.
but hey, I am kind of responsible.
There is a
That's what I'm saying.
COG agreement.
Yeah, that's right. We saw that. I forgot about that.
And at least in my experience, there's been decent collaboration between the people running the calls, not the politics, but the people running the calls.
Yes.
Decent
I agree.
collaboration.
I agree with that.
And I bring this up because I don't want the newer or the command officers that haven't worked down there, haven't had this experience. when you run the river call, you're going to have a Fairfax battalion chief pipe on the air.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have Fairfax water assets start talking.
If it's in the river, right?
Yeah.
If they got the call and it's in the river or somewhere on the shore, yes, they have backed. Correct me. They backed off responding to anything on the Billy Goat Trail. Normally, if they got the call, they'd come anyways, even though it's the Billy Goat. But we've worked it out. Special ops worked it out where, for the most part, I don't hear them coming to Billy Goat Trail calls anymore.
Okay.
I had a call at White's Ferry right in the middle of the night, like 1:30 in the morning, and so we dealt with Loudon on that, and they had boats in the water faster than we did, right? And there was actually a person who tried to swim across that river and was stranded on the island, one of those downstream islands. I'll say it was pretty seamless. Actually, the folks who got in that water on the Loudon side were good, right? They were good, and it was not a big to-do, other than it was a nighttime operation. I was a little nervous about it, but it worked out okay. But the call I don't know where it originated at, but Loudon had sent folks.
And any other thing to remember, just to throw this out there, is Loudon, you got to think up there in White's Ferry area, it's really rural on our side, right? But on the Loudon side,
Populated.
pretty populated, and they got
Suburban
they got a
area.
trauma center, I think, right there. They got a hospital. So when it comes to patient movement, just instant commanders need to consider that
Good point.
to work with Loudon in that case. It might just like down in Scotch Run, where it might be faster to bring the patient over to our side. Up there, it might be the opposite.
Yeah, those are really good points. I think we have some more questions. Is that right?
The question is for me, Chief, and I apologize. I don't mean to hijack this at all, and I know this is really a command officer-styled forum, but this question is for Chief Blinkhorn about a comment that you made using the what three words. Are you saying that if we have an injured person, for example, whether it be on the Billy Goat Trail or in the woods somewhere, to kind of to help you pinpoint their location, if you have their cell number, you will call them, the caller, and say, hey, call 911 so that they can obtain the what three words from that calling cell phone? I'm a little confused.
So this has only occurred when, again, this is going back to the Fairfax. When Fairfax sends over a number or posts it, this was the calling party's number. I don't think, and maybe somebody from ECC online can pipe. I don't think ECC can call them and get that information, right? They have to call 911 in order to grab that GPS location.
But you could call as a command officer, or even me as a company officer, pick up my Zellophone and call that contact number, say,
We
hey,
do it all the time on
this
the river. We do it all the time. We call the calling party, the river team does, the swiftwater officer calls because they can gather that information. Like, where'd you park? Did you park at Anglers? Did you park Great Falls? Did you go up? Did you go down? But when it comes to getting that GPS, a lot of people don't know how to use their phone and provide us a GPS coordinate. So if that number transfers over, or we have that number, I might call them and say, hey, listen,
call 911.
Call 911 so we can get so I can get your location. Yeah, because I can't do that through my phone, and 911 can't call them and get it. They have to literally call 911 themselves.
And and I'm not expecting you to know this answer, and I will research it for our next episode. Do we have to have the app for ECC to obtain that information? Do you know?
ECC has an app somewhere up there on their line.
Yeah, as a calling party, if I were calling.
No. You do not need to have what three words app. No. Nope.
Thank you.
Nope. Montgomery ECC is going to get that GPS coordinates, and they're going to transpose it into the what three words app, and then.
So I would have to have the app then.
You would have to have the app. Okay. Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Chief Gibson, did you say there was another question? No.
Nope.
If you want, because I think there were a lot of questions that I had heard prior to this episode about, what company officers can do and Swiftwater resources. So I got a video of a pendulum rescue.
Okay.
Yeah.
That
Let's do it.
was fallout from a conversation I had with my swiftwater officer. He sent it to me and said, hey, this is what can happen before we get there, and this is also a technique that we can use if the swiftwater team isn't there. So,
This is not Sligo Creek.
this is not, I don't know where this is, but this is
Wrap it
civilians
around
making
your
a
gun
rescue,
and jump.
right? So they threw a rope to this, I believe it's a female. And I don't know if you can hear the audio, but basically they're telling her to hold on and to jump in the water. Right? And the
So
rope-
she's coming out the passenger side.
You guys got the audio on that
Sorry.
back there? There you go.
Wrap it hard and jump. You'll swing around. You'll swing around. Yep, jump. You'll swing around.
So
Nice.
I'll let Master Firefighter
Nice.
DeVore expand on this, but this is what we call the pendulum technique, and this is a technique that I think is in the toolbox.
Yep.
Right. But keep that. We'll go back to this picture, and I'll let Master Firefighter DeVore also talk about the hydraulics and where the danger area is around the car and where the safe area, what we'll call safe areas around the car.
So if you look at that vehicle, you'll see water cascading over the hood. But if you look at the passenger side rear where she came out, you'll see this sort of drop down, and the vehicle is actually providing an eddy or a break in the water on that side. So we would call the downstream side or that side the safe side. It's a little bit of a misnomer, but it's the better place to be rather than on the front side where she could get pushed or you could get pushed up into the vehicle and pinned there. So it's good that she's on that downstream side or on that off side away, and then when she gets in the water wants to take her downstream. And so as long as she's able to hold on and the folks who are on the shore with the throw bag stay in place and hold tight, that rope is just going to swing into the shore.
And you have to have somebody there to retrieve the victim.
So,
Yeah.
absolutely, right? So you have to have somebody to retrieve that, and then for our situation, if we were to do something like this, I'd like to see folks downstream with throw bags because, there's a good chance that she won't be able to hold on. So halfway through that, she's no longer able to hold on to the rope and let's go, and now she's flush downstream, and being able to get a throw bag and flotation to her would be important. So this is a tool for your toolbox. There are some inherent risks to it, but if this is one of those situations where
right.
you need to make a decision, this is a good one. You don't have any of our personnel who are in the IDLH. You have folks that are relatively safe, and they're able to effect a rescue, and so that's what you'd like to see.
Windows down, windows up in a car.
So I know that currently ECC is telling folks that if water's rising, that they want them to put the windows down and to crawl onto the roof. And the thought being that as the water rises, the water will fill the vehicle and add some weight to it and make it less buoyant, keep it less likely to shift. It's that in-between time that's really dangerous. So we have a patient who's climbed out of the roof, the water's not reached those windows yet, and that vehicle's starting to move. So now I have a patient who's outside of the vehicle, on the roof, not encapsulated, who could then potentially be thrown off as that vehicle shifts and moves. So there are some risks to that. The ideal thing would be to put the windows down, stay in the vehicle until the water is just getting ready to come in, right? So you basically want to be climbing out of the vehicle as the water's starting to come in. Because before that, as long as you're in the vehicle may shift and move, but you're not going to get flushed downstream, you're not going to get pinned up against something, you're relatively safe. So, you have to be able to balance that whole thing between sending them out too soon, the vehicle shifts, and now they're, slid off the top.
And that's probably easier said than done. For the call taker. Right?
So,
taking the lesser of two evils.
So as a call taker, I certainly don't envy them.
Yeah.
As somebody who's on scene who can witness this, you might have them put the windows down while they still have electric windows.
Because they're frantic when they're on the phone, too.
So, and we all know that what our callers present over the phone, and then what we show up to are often not the same. So trying to balance those two things with not losing our patient, keeping them safe, and then being able to effect a rescue once things are.
So I think we have another video of value, unless there's anything else for this one.
Two little quick videos. So one's got a little bit of humor to it, but Captain Russell sent me a video called "Why We Pole," and it's just a quick little short. And it, in one of the many conversations I've had with him about urban flooding, he usually sends me a bunch of videos here or there when he comes across them to get me thinking. This one's kind of a reminder of how easily water can hide hazards. So here's a guy, some of you may have seen this before, getting ready to cross a little. So again, and then after this video, I want to show the manhole cover video, right? And we can say that was a manhole, and I think that's not only obstruction, but generally I would say the main obstruction we're looking for is a manhole, right? So here's a video of just how powerful.
With the manholes, if you fall in there, you're not coming out.
Yep.
I mean, that's the short version of that. And so there are a lot of hidden hazards when the water flows in, and whether it's just you wouldn't believe how slick the yellow or white lines are. You step on that, feet slip out from underneath you, and now you're floating downstream. I've seen roadways undermined, so where you think it's safe,
Yep.
all of a sudden it's unstable. So driving a vehicle or a fire truck out there looks shallow, and all of a sudden the road gives way underneath you. So there are a lot of hidden hazards that, making entry into these is not just as simple as just walking out there,
Okay, so you just hit on two things that I wanted
Okay.
to ask you. The first one, probably the more important one of the two right now, is how high can the water be, or should the water be, or shouldn't it be when we attempt to drive across it?
Oh, well, so, the simple thing is like the turnaround, don't drown, right?
Right.
So anytime you see water over the road and you can't see the road, we should not be driving.
can't see the
Can't
asphalt.
see the asphalt, right?
Okay.
That's the simple way
No, it's
to go
great.
about it, and that way we're not speculating.
My second question, and it's not really a question, it's a point,
Okay?
is I'd like you to convey and reiterate the importance of not underestimating, we talked about the power vertically, the power laterally of urban swift water movement.
So water will always win. It is stronger than you, and it is relentless. So once you're trapped in it, you have to hope that it goes down or it goes away, because you're not going to win against it. We've seen tractor trailers be moved on it. I've watched guys lose their footing and be swept downstream, which is always disconcerting to watch one of our guys lose their footing. And we've had some really close calls in this county with folks getting pinned in strainers, and we've been real lucky so far, and I would just hate to be around when our luck runs out. So don't ever underestimate the water. I tried to think of when Chief Davis asked me to talk today, I tried to think of a good analogy between water rescue and fire, right? Because that's where we would get our brains are at. And, think about water as an ideal age. We swim, right? So how dangerous could it be? Well, we build campfires, so not dangerous. But on the other hand, you wouldn't enter a fully involved structure with no PPE, but we're always seem to be willing to enter the water without training and without PPE or the proper PPE. So if you think of water as an ideal H, do you have the training to enter it? Do you have the proper PPE to enter it? And if that water was a fire and you had to make a rescue and you had no gear, would you make entry? And that's a personal command. I don't want to speculate on that, but that's kind of where we're at with what water is versus what we do.
Did I interrupt you? Were you getting ready to say something? No?
I don't think so. I think we have like 10 minutes left.
Yeah.
Allocated.
I just want to piggyback off your question about how high the water
Yeah,
should be for
please.
driving. How
Yeah.
about a shallow water crossing?
Yeah, so actually, there is some guidelines in that, and that our boat-trained folks the water has to be 18 inches or less for them to make entry.
Which boat? Operational?
So, no.
or
So
swiftwater?
when I apologize. When I talk about a boat, that's an operational versus swift water.
Okay.
All right, so for operational folks who've had the boat class, 18 inches is what's written. If it's below your knees, you're okay. Calf would be better. But anything above that, we're starting to run into trouble. And the reality is that the water level, not only for the vehicle but for our personnel, if you look across our Swiftwater crew, some guys are taller and some guys are shorter, but once that water reaches the bottom of your PFD, you're no longer walking, you're swimming. And so you kind of look, I look at, who am I with? Am I the shortest person? Frequently am. When that water reaches the bottom of my PFD, I'm swimming, right? So we really need to be careful about going out there. So the general recommendation is 18 inches for flat water folks, boat crew folks. There is nothing written about operational folks who have no training about when they should or shouldn't enter the water.
Okay. So we have a few minutes left. Do you have anything else you'd like to inject or add?
No, I have nothing.
You're going to close it out?
I've made pre-arrangements with Chief.
So I do want to, I know people have commented before, so the wipers on Battalion 1's car are really good, and Chief Fitch, you can thank him for the Rain-X, right? So that's, if he works at your battalion and you need clean windshields, Chief Fitch is the guy, because my windshield would never look like that without him putting Rain-X on it.
Good to know.
And now that we have Chief First, Rob First, tires look pretty good too.
Nice.
That's all I got to add.
Nice. Chief Gibson.
All right. Well, thank you guys very much for watching. We hope you hit that subscribe button. Be on the lookout for another episode coming up here in the beginning of the November time frame. And we hope to see you there. Thank you very much.